Anyway, hi everyone. We're live. This is Jen Wilson with HR Huddle at Convergence Coaching with my good friend and colleague Samantha Mansfield. And Samantha's pointing out that we're going to edit the front of this recording later because I had a goofy message that made me talk to the inside, the backstage, and not the front stage. So, but we really wanted to come. Samantha and I are excited to have this conversation with you because we wanted to talk about retreats. We are running into a lot of organizations that are putting together group summits, all hands meetings, partner retreats, partner manager retreats, vision planning meetings. I mean, you name it, they're being planned for this fall and into next spring. And when we encounter folks that want to talk to us about the services we might provide around that, what we discover is that they haven't answered a lot of questions that we would think that they would want to answer about their, what are we trying to accomplish and who are we going to invite and how were we picturing it going down so that we could help. And of course, we go through those questions with them, but we thought it might help you as an HR professional because a lot of times HR is brought into, from administrators and HR, brought into the conversation to help frame it up and plan it and make it successful. And so we thought it might be beneficial if we spent today's HR Huddle talking about planning those really important meetings, retreats, and summits, and some best practices that we have learned in our time doing them. So Samantha, I'm going to turn it over to you and you can take it from there.
Sure. So we are definitely hearing of more firms ready. They're just ready to have the retreats, to start doing planning, to pull people together. And where Jen was just doing that handoff is there needs to be the discussion on what's the objective, what's the purpose for bringing everybody together. There's a whole slew of different types of retreats. And I think sometimes we think retreat and it can be all encompassing, but sometimes when we make it too big, or oftentimes when we make the objective too big, it makes it very difficult for us to have success as we're doing the retreat itself or making it a fulfilling or an impactful event. And so one of the things that we would really encourage is that if you get pulled into this conversation or asked about, hey, what about we do a retreat? One of the great questions is, what kind of retreat are we wanting to have? What is it that we want to accomplish? Is it time for team building? So many people have been struggling with not being able to be together and connected. And so it's just time that we have a good team building retreat and put some emphasis and fun in that. And then others are saying, gosh, we've been doing so much learning around all of these things that have been popping up, PPP, ERC, all those things that were happening, but maybe there's some more long-term strategic learning that's fallen by the wayside and we just haven't done it. A number we've been getting requests for is investing in the people skills of our people. We've been putting so much in the technical, but we haven't been doing a lot with the people skills. And doing a retreat where you're doing that kind of learning, that your objective and the delivery of that can be so very different. And then, certainly if you're bringing especially leaders together, there's the visioning or the strategic retreats. And with all of these, one thing that we would really say is start thinking about who should be involved. And that's another one that at first pass might seem like a really easy question to answer. But in actuality, when you start getting to what are the results we want from this and what are the insights that should be shared, that's where oftentimes it starts to bloom on who should be involved. It might take some further discussion on that. So Jen, I don't know if you want to add or chime in at that as well, because I know we have that conversation with leaders quite a bit on who should be in the room.
Yeah. So Samantha, let's talk a little bit about the kinds of meetings you just started. You touched them. So I'm going to take the kinds of meetings you touched and then we'll start attaching audiences. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start where you ended, which was a strategic, like longer range vision planning, where we might be creating a 5-year vision with then maybe 3 and 1 year strategies or something like that.
Mhm.
In the olden days, the equity partners went off on a mountain and carved the strategy into tablets and came down and handed it over to people or something. And that doesn't create a lot of enrollment or engagement or ownership over that vision or plan. And it also doesn't necessarily involve the stakeholders who will be here 5 years from now, maybe who will be at the table as owners. So when we're thinking about strategic planning, we always want to make sure there's some involvement from non-partner, non-owner folks. We want to see the operational leaders involved always. My goodness, they have so much to offer and such good perspectives, and they're so important to the process. And then we like to see some of the younger folks, next generation folks involved in that process. Now, whether they're involved as an input to the process by being surveyed or interviewed, or whether they're physically in attendance, that varies depending upon what you're trying to accomplish. But we would make sure that we had a diverse cross-section of folks and not just owners in that kind of a meeting. So that's one example. I'll take another, and then you can jump in here with some other examples. Samantha was just talking about adding soft skills. And we're getting a lot of asks for, like, we want to put together a manager day, and we're going to train all our managers on these skills. And we love that idea. That bonds that group together. It's, manager, senior manager, or whatever it is. We love that group. They're super fun. But we're always a little worried that if the partners don't get those same soft skills, or if they've never had them, which many of them have never had the benefit of that we're sort of creating an emperor has no clothes environment where the staff, the managers now know what the best practices are or the ideal scenarios are for leadership behavior, mindset, and actions. But then they start to look at their leaders and think, my goodness, those folks don't reflect these. And so sometimes we'll hear, we just want you to train these guys on it. And we'll say, well, could we expand? And maybe we do a day and a half with the manager, senior managers, and then a Cliff Notes half day with the partners. Or could we get the partners to participate with the managers and senior managers? And as long as they don't come in and act like I know all this, or they come in and out, or they're on their phone the whole time, or all that's not good, reflective behavior inside a learning event. As long as they would be committed to participate, we'd love to have them. We always welcome the folks upstream so they can hear what people are learning, and they can also begin to reflect those same behaviors and mindsets. So just a couple of things on the who.
Absolutely. Well, and like you said, some additional ones that we haven't said at this point as well is succession planning. That's another one. Is there a succession planning retreat that we need to do? And with that one, it can easily feel as though that's the partner group and we're going to bring the partner group. But like you were mentioning, Jen, with even the strategic retreat, who's the next gen? Who's coming into this? Who's going to be buying into this partnership? Who's going to be the people who are going to be the caretakers of the transitions? Because it shouldn't be the person who's retiring, and it shouldn't be the person it's all getting passed to. So the people who are going to be those shepherds of taking care of all that transition and putting those plans together and executing all of that, there are certainly different voices that can bring a lot of support and guidance and objectivity to the conversation, because especially in a retreat like that, there is a lot of selfish interest that's going on. There are a lot of emotions that are going on. And so bringing some folks in that can have a very objective approach and listening ear that's helping to guide the outcomes. And that's one of the other things that we would say is that when you're thinking of who your audience is, think about what are going to be the types of actions that you're going to want. Now, we're not generating those before the retreat. That's the whole purpose. But we have to think about, what kinds of things are we going to want to come out of that? Because there's some result we're driving. And so who would be involved? Who would be tapped? And when we're thinking about that, then should those people be there? Or should they be there for at least a portion of it? Are there meetings that they come in and out of? So make sure that that's being considered as you do start to think about again, the type as well as the who that should be involved. And the other element that we would say is then when you start to think about, well, what's the format? With so many organizations having people that are remote, that is a real consideration that you want to take into account as well. Are we doing this as a virtual retreat? Are we doing this as an in-person retreat? Or are we trying to do this as a hybrid retreat? And so if we talk about the virtual, a couple of things that we would say is you've really got to look at the technology that you're using. Make sure that everybody's got cameras on. Make sure that the microphones are good. We know this. We've done a million video conferencing meetings, but you're doing this as a retreat. And so if we're doing this virtually, we've got to think about the pacing. You got to give people time to stand up and stretch. We've got to incorporate ways that discussion can really happen, because it's too easy when we're doing Zoom that somebody takes that forefront, the person who's guiding the slides, that kind of stuff. And it just turns into every other meeting. And that's not what we're looking for with a retreat. So you really have to take a step back and maybe draw from scratch what a virtual would look like and how we would have a truly collaborative event using the virtual setting. Jen. Oh, I think you're muted.
I'm completely botching the technology, but I think I was helping you not hear the dog. We'll see how that turns out. I think on that very fact of remote or hybrid or virtual or whatever you want to say there, I think it works best if we do not have a room full of people and then a couple people remote, unless we really have wonderful technology that will pick up the audio from the room and allow people to see the faces in the room, because otherwise it's just this big body of blurry little tiny heads, and they can't see faces, and it won't create relationships, and it won't, people don't feel as a part of that big room. And so I like where you were headed with the idea that we might say, well, if a number of us have to be remote, let's all go get our own connection and all have our own little window, and we'll all turn our cameras on, and then we can hear each other, and we can see each other. We could do group work. We could chat. There's all kinds of interactivity possible. And so I just want to kind of guard against that idea that we've just got a couple people and they'll attend remotely. That's a little bit like listen only or something. It's super hard to have them feel part of it. The other piece of it is we're seeing a lot of firms who are trying to do that team building you talked about, Samantha, or trying to give people a feeling of unity and a feeling of really being part of something cool and exciting and really getting in touch with the purpose of the firm and all of those things. We're seeing a lot of firms that have hybrid teams bring them in once or twice a year for something, a firm week or 3 days or something, where they do a combination of strategy, and they do learning, and they do team building, and they do community service, and they just do fun and food. And so that's just something else to think about. We have a lot of clients now that have significant, kind of blended teams. And they, tell people when they hire them, here are this next year's 2 firm weeks. These are the dates, put them on your calendar. We really want you to be here for them. And of course, people, have illness. They have babies that are due suddenly and things like that disrupt their ability to attend those firm weeks. But on the whole, most people just are sick about missing them because they're so fun and so great. So that's another kind of retreat that you might want to consider, where you're making the investment to bring in all the people and bring them together.
Exactly. And exactly what you just said too. Careful of trying to plan that in too short of a time span, because they've got client commitments, they have family commitments. And so then it makes it really hard. And for the planners, you get frustrated because you're feeling like we put all this effort and people aren't showing up. So I really echo what you said right there, Jen, is we plan this in advance. Those dates are locked on the calendar. And we emphasize to the team that they know, do not think that this is optional. don't schedule client meetings, don't sell those dates to be out, that those dates are safeguarded for really true time together as a team. And especially firms that have maybe just a couple people, it needs to be added in the budget that those people are flown in. That those people are brought in person. Don't let them feel as though they're missing out, or it's like you said, even if you tell them we want you to contribute, if they're the only one that's remote, then they will have the feeling that they are that proverbial fly on the wall, and they're sitting there listening, or they're watching all the bonding happening and they're missing out on it. Yeah. And it can really have the opposite effect.
Yeah. The other thing, Samantha, that I just wanted to make sure we covered here is that if the intentions are to have a larger number of people involved, it's super difficult to hear every voice in the big room. Mm-hmm. And there isn't really time, even if there's like 30 people, for every person to stand up at the beginning and introduce themselves. I know that's what we want to do, especially when there are people that have always been remote. We've never met them in the 3D, and we want introductions, but boy, that eats up clock time. And when you have that many people on the clock, you just can't do it. So think of fun like icebreakers and things that will get people sort of interacting and introducing self at the beginning and during breaks and that sort of thing. Put together as much interactivity as you can. So Samantha was talking about like getting on Zoom or something and having the slide person just slide us to death. And, and that's so dull and boring, and everybody else puts their camera off and goes on mute and just kind of listens to it like it was a podcast or something. And they're not really participating. And so what we need to do is be really thoughtful about exercises and group work. And also, where are people sitting? Because if you are a multi-office firm, or you are a firm that has, some pretty significant sized departments, it's super easy for people to just hang out with their regular posse. I'm going to hang out and sit with my office people, or I'm going to sit with my tax people, or whatever it is. And so creating some thoughtful groups and figuring out seating, and if it's remote groups, figuring out the group assignments to try to make sure that you have the right mix, and mixing it up during the event. So I'm not stuck with the one group you gave me. The next morning I come in, it's a different group, or we get up and we trade groups midday, or whatever it is, so we can mix people up. They will get to meet most people if you do it that way. I'll get exposed. And then also you get to hear more of what they're saying if you do that kind of group work and have them share back. You get the sounds of the people, the populace, instead of just the sounds of the few.
And to that same point of hearing additional voices, I would encourage to think about who different facilitators could be. That's another one. Easy go-to is it's the partners or it's the leadership group, but gosh, think about the different topics. Think about how you can engage other people. Think about people who have really shown a passion for a particular topic, or maybe the topic's on the agenda because somebody has been in the background driving that. Is this an opportunity to give that person a chance to get up there, show their passion, get involved, give them exposure to being able to speak in front of their peers. So careful with, again, going with the default of who the facilitators will be, and really think about that mix. Do some interesting pairings, get people together that have done some great projects. Or again, this is an opportunity, unlike when we're in those regular meetings, that we can draw out what's going on in the organization, and we can really showcase a lot of people across the firm, create a lot of great visibility across the firm, and don't miss that opportunity with a retreat.
I love that. And Samantha, you just had me think of a future HR huddle. So Samantha and Caroline, perk up here on the ears. I think we could do a whole HR huddle on when you have some pretty significant cultural issues, or partner performance issues, or some sticky, tricky, terrible, troubles, and you want to do a retreat around those. How do you do that one? because that's totally different than what we've been talking about today. And we're not going to have time to go into it, but that's a different kind of facilitation. But for what Samantha was just talking about, changing up the facilitation, even if you hire an outside facilitator, it's a good idea to say, hey, let's put a few different voices on the agenda and make sure other people stand up and lead different sections. And that can make it way more interesting. It can, give different voices and faces that helps people feel more engaged, and certainly different perspectives. And so I love that, Samantha. And I think Samantha's got a blog that's, on that verge of being posted related to retreats. And I'm sure some of these things are covered in that. So if you follow our blog at convergencecoaching.com/blog, you can find it there. We'll try to remember to cycle back to this live post in social and add the blog after it's posted. But we really hope that you thoughtfully consider these retreats or these trainings or these group meetings that you're putting on, and really think about objective, audience, delivery format, level of engagement, and including the hybrid folks, all really important for an engaging, difference-making retreat experience. Thanks, everybody, for being with us today. Thank you, Samantha, for your ideas. They were awesome. And we look forward to seeing you at a future HR Huddle. Bye now.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.